Una muy cordial bienvenida a todos estos participantes en esta Masterclass titulada Creación de nuevas experiencias inmersivas, la cual ha sido traída a ustedes por Nova. Nova es una empresa dedicada al entrenamiento de talento y desarrollo de talento también en toda Latinoamérica. El objetivo de estos eventos es poder promover el desarrollo de profesionales que quieran fortalecer sus conocimientos en temas importantes y que estos temas también puedan hacer un cambio en la vida de sus familias. La Masterclass será transmitida en inglés, una presentación en pantalla y resúmenes en castellano. Les invitamos a que usen el botón que dice Raise Hand. De esta forma, un miembro del equipo podrá darles acceso para que puedan hablar y hay un icono de Q&A para poder escribir sus preguntas. La Masterclass va a ser dirigida por nuestro invitado especial, Austina Wang, de la empresa The Third Floor. Es un estudio de visualización dedicado a apoyar la producción de contenido multimedia de próxima generación para largometrajes, televisión, comerciales, videojuegos, realidad virtual y atracciones temáticas. Lo que están a punto de ver es algo en extremo importante y puede considerarse como la información más reciente en el mercado. En Nova nos enorgullecemos de proponer opciones de entrenamiento del más alto nivel para profesionales de la industria de habla hispana. Y en esta ocasión queremos aprovechar para invitarles al certificado internacional de texturizado y Unreal Engine, el cual arranca en noviembre. Y si quieres entrar a Unreal Engine directamente, porque ya eres un modelador, entonces se arranca en diciembre. Desde uno de los 10 centros más reconocidos a nivel mundial de entrenamiento en estos conocimientos. Se encuentra en Europa, sus clases son en línea todos los sábados a precios extremadamente competitivos. Y recibes un certificado con la tecnología blockchain que acompaña tus propuestas de negocios y tu currículum vitae a nivel internacional. En la diapositiva ustedes pueden ver el correo electrónico. El correo dice contact@novacompany.com. También pueden utilizar el correo victor@novacompany.com o el correo stephanie@novacompany.com. Así que vamos a pasar ahora a la parte en inglés. Now we are joined as part of the Nova team by Stephanie, who works as a 3D digital animation manager, and our guest, Austina Wang, which is a 3D artist and programmer specializing in VR game development and virtual production. And finally, who speaks to you as Nova director, my name is Victor. The topics we're going to cover today are a brief story about Austina's career and a bit about the Third Floor, the company she's working in, virtual production advantages, and a masterclass introducing a virtual production project. So, Stephanie, why don't you start with your intro before we hand it over to Austina, please?
Bueno, muchas gracias a todos el público que nos está acompañando hoy en la Masterclass titulada Creación de nuevas experiencias inmersivas. De verdad estamos muy agradecidos y animados de seguir trayéndoles nuevas oportunidades que cambiarán sus vidas. Para continuar, siempre queremos recordarles a todos que usen el botón de Raise Hand para poder brindarles acceso a que puedan hablar y también el Q&A para cualquier pregunta que quieran hacer durante el Masterclass. Todos aquí queremos conocer a Austina Wang, quien ha tenido una trayectoria profesional larga y cuando le presentamos la idea que nos apoyara en brindar esta Masterclass, no lo pensó ni 2 veces cuando ya había dicho que sí. Y por esa parte estamos más que agradecidos. So, Austina, everyone is eager to hear from you. So, the audience is all yours.
Hello, everyone. Today, my presentation is going to be about Unreal Engine for virtual production. Starting it off with a little bit about me. My name, I graduated from Chapman University, which is up here in California. I'm currently located in Los Angeles. Chapman is in this Los Angeles area. My major was in animation and visual effects. I had a minor in virtual reality, and I graduated just last year. So I'm a pretty recent grad, and currently I now work at the Third Floor. We're a very big company, or not a big company, but we have a reach in a lot of movies in this industry. I've been working at Third Floor right out of graduation. When I was a freshman in college, my professor took us on a little studio tour to the third floor. This was before COVID, so we went and we visited. I was 19 years old. I stood in this lobby, which is the picture on the bottom. I stood in this lobby at 19 years old and I said, oh my gosh, I want to work here. And I graduated, and 1 month later, I ended up at my dream company. So I'm really, really happy to be here. And I've been here for about 9 months, and it doesn't get old. I go to this office every day and still love it here. So I definitely love what I do about my job, and I hope that passion comes through here. So my position is Unreal Engine Technical Director. I like to consider my job as a bridge between the art and technology side of filmmaking. So I support the pipeline between the different softwares that we use, help figure out if there's problems and solve those problems in an efficient manner. I help develop tools, come up for tools that the artists in our company use and the directors use that are our clients. And sometimes I get to assist in operating those tools on set. The goals of this class, there's going to be a little class portion, which is just this PowerPoint, and I'll have a little very casual demonstration portion. My goal is to kind of help explain what virtual production is, because it's a word that gets thrown around in the film industry, but it kind of covers a lot of things. I want to explore the ways that Unreal Engine is used specifically and what the type of skills are needed. For the demonstration portion, I'm just going to show a personal project of mine that I'm allowed to show. Just kind of show a foundation for operating Unreal Engine, the creative tools, and just kind of explain and hopefully convey so you guys get an understanding of how you can then use that further on for other applications. A little bit about my company, the Third Floor. We work in something called pre-visualization. When you think of visual effects companies, you usually think of after you shoot something on set, you take it home and you put explosions, you put dinosaurs. For movies such as that, which are becoming a lot of movies these days, before you go on set, you have to know, okay, there's going to be a dinosaur standing here. And so before we go on set, we want to know where it's standing. And that way we can shoot someone standing in the correct position, looking in the correct direction, and all of that. And that whole practice of planning before you shoot on set is known as pre-visualization. So we are a pre-visualization company, and that bleeds into services, which we also call post-visualization, tech visualization, and so forth. I'm going to play just a little video. I don't think the sound will come through, but I'll just kind of talk over it. This is from Guardians of the Galaxy. If anyone's familiar with this movie, Third Floor is one of those companies that, because we work on a lot of big action movies, we tend to work on pretty much most big action movies from the past couple decades or so. I would say Third Floor has had some hand in it. As you can see here, if you might recognize some of these movies, what we're seeing is a very rough pass of the movie that later becomes final. And you see how those rough passes of previs are used as a guideline when they're shooting on set, and that becomes a guideline that after they create the movie, it's exactly what the director wanted. And this is a practice that saves money, because then you don't have to go on set and reshoot if you made a mistake of where they're standing, where they're looking, or they make a decision they want to change. It also helps everyone on set be on the same page, because there's so many people. There's like the camera people, the lighting people, the actors. Hulk's not actually there. So if we have an idea of what Hulk is doing, we can make sure Thor is looking in the right direction, responding to him in the right way, and so forth. So this is just kind of like a Third Floor's little demonstration of everything. Let's see. There's subtitles that kind of we won't be able to hear, but here's just a couple other ways that we use visualization. It's not just about creating a 3D pass, but it's about providing the director, the creative team, the freedom to have control over their story before they go on a shoot. So I will kind of get into a bit more of those specific tools, but as you can see, there's quite a lot of ways that we can offer pre-visualization to the team.
Excellent. That's a lot of work. It seems like there's a lot of work in pre-visualization.
Right. Yeah. It usually like movie studios will start pre-visualization years before the movie. It's definitely a lot of planning, but the payoff is incredible because if you plan it out properly, you end up with a movie that the director likes, and that's doesn't cost as much money because mistakes are always more expensive to fix down the line when you've already gone that far. So this right here, what we see on the screen is what we call tech visualization, which has a lot of overlap and is more utilized in virtual production, which is planning out the mechanics of, the camera rig, planning out exactly what lens you're going to use, planning out, where the rig goes. It's a bit of like, a little bit of little math, a little bit of like that kind of stuff in there. That's something that personally, I'm a bit more of a technically minded person. So this kind of stuff is very interesting to me. This is stuff I love. And things like this specifically are what I really love about working here. So yeah.
And you got there right before you graduate. That's so cool.
Right. It's funny because I grew up as a huge Marvel fan. I used to read the comics. Third Floor has worked on every Marvel movie since Iron Man 2. So it's really cool to be at this company. And I'm a humongous Game of Thrones fan. Like I used to watch with my friends every summer as it came out. And it's so cool to be able to see, like, be working with people who worked on the shows that inspired me. Right. Yeah, let's see. This video is all done. It's just a little bit more of a demonstration. As you guys will see in this presentation, I'm going to be covering kind of a very wide kind of breadth of things. And kind of one thing to note is that no matter how skilled you are in virtual production, every movie has different needs. So you'll see sometimes we'll use the same tools, but then there's be different adaptations. And essentially what's so exciting about, then from my point of view working here, is that no two movies are the same. A lot of it is about problem solving. So all of these are ideas that somebody came up with to solve that specific way the dragon flies or if the dragon's landing. So I'm going to be covering a lot of the common tools we use, but at the end of the day, this is an industry that is constantly evolving and is next year there's going to be some new update, going to be some new tool, and so on and so forth. Okay. Yeah. That's about the end of the video. Yeah. So I'm just going to move forward. Pause. Click. To start out, so a little case study with LED walls. I want to give a couple specific examples of how we use Unreal Engine for virtual production. This is probably the most popular. This is The Mandalorian, came out in 2019. Anyone in the visual effects industry was like, whoa, when this came out, because this using LED walls to shoot, meaning putting actors in front of these enormous TVs, has so many benefits. First and foremost, the reason they used this technique on The Mandalorian is The Mandalorian, as we can see, this is him. His helmet is extremely shiny. Mm-hmm. So if we were to shoot this TV show on a green screen, you would have to take out the green background and you would have to fix all the green reflections on his shiny helmet. That's incredibly difficult. So the demands of this specific story are what prompted this innovation. And kind of like, as I just said, every movie, every project has different needs with which prompt different problem-solving techniques to come forward. So Mandalorian shot pretty much the entire thing. There were some green screen shots in here as well, but they shot in front of this giant LED wall. A lot of the benefits filmmakers saw was that you have complete control over what goes put on behind. The actors can see what's behind them. You get sunsets that last all day instead of sunsets that last 1 hour. It gives you a lot more control. And if you plan this properly, you save a lot of money afterwards because you don't have to go back and remove a background and put in creatures. And I mean, you still do put in creatures and things like that, but you're basically pushing a lot of the work to the front. And that kind of brings a sense of realism on set. That said, there's also a lot of planning to go with it. So let's take a look at, this is an overview of, this is kind of a long video, so I will kind of scrub through it, but this is an overview of how they shot. So all of these are actual sets, and I've been lucky enough to go on this stage myself. It is enormous. Yes. Whoa. It is very, very big. the stages they use, it is something that only Disney has the money to do. So since 2019, when Mandalorian came out, I think in 2019, there were 3 LED stages globally. Now it's 2022 and there's about 300. So
Wow.
it was so cool to everyone that everyone was like, oh my gosh, we have to go build stages. And a lot of places built stages. Most places don't have the money to build one nearly as big as Mandalorian. And so that comes with its own set of challenges, which I will get into a bit later. But as you can see, there's quite a lot of things going on this set. A lot of people worked on these. You have to match the trees on set to the trees in the background. And that, of course, comes with a lot of planning. And that's what third floor kind of comes in for. So pre-visualization is something that is really useful for movies, but for virtual production shoots, specifically LED wall movies that use an LED wall, it is almost essential.
Wow.
So there is very few people using the green screen already.
I would say that most people still rely on green screen because it is much cheaper. To have an LED wall is very expensive. It's not just the cost of the TV, but the cost of a computer to run it, the air conditioning to run it, of people who know how to run it. I would say people is possibly the most expensive because this technology is, it's not necessarily new, but used in this capacity to this scale is relatively new. So the people in this industry that know how to use it are very limited. So the human resources are the ones that are kind of holding this back. Right. But yeah, so this is The Mandalorian and all the Star Wars shows to follow are ones that have really used the LED walls because they have them. They're under Disney. Lucasfilm is owned by Disney, so they can. I believe Thor, which the latest Thor, Love and Thunder, which is owned by Marvel, which is owned by Disney, got to use some of it too. But yeah, as you can see, let's see that clip real quick, where you're standing on set and someone can change the lighting or put a spaceship on just right then and there. And everyone on set can see, oh, it's over here. No, let's move it this way a little bit. Let's make the sun go lower. That gives the director a lot of flexibility because you obviously can't do that on set.
You can have your own sun, your own moon, your own everything.
Yeah, exactly. You can change the color of the sun if you want it to be pink, if you want it to be brighter and all of that. So the way Unreal Engine comes into this is that most of these backgrounds that you see are generated in Unreal Engine, and Unreal Engine is what powers it. So especially when it's on an LED wall and you're changing stuff in real time, you're going to need a game engine that can handle those changes on such a large resolution in real time. And as of now, Unreal Engine is the best at doing that. But yeah.
We have one question, Austina.
Yeah.
There is Daniela who's saying, when you say different processes in each production, you mean that the process of pre-visualization is always different technique and steps?
Yes. There are some practices that are the same, such as we start from a storyboard, we start from a 2D drawing, we create the frames, we think about how we shoot it. In terms of that, we approach it with the same kind of thinking, but let's say season 2 or season 3 has a shot where someone's flying and we don't know how we're going to follow them with the camera. So those are the kind of processes that come with different movies. Or maybe there's a giant like spaceship here that's like so big it's not going to fit on set. How are we going to fake that? How are we going to make it bigger or something like that? So those are the specific processes I mean. And as this is kind of, we'll go into my next topic as well, but third floor has a pipeline, which is a very like built-in workflow for using Unreal Engine for pre-visualization. We use that workflow. We call it Mercury. Mercury, the workflow is used on quite a few projects right now. So when I got to third floor, I was trained in Mercury, which is a pipeline that's pretty established. It's flexible, but it's established. Mercury was developed for Mandalorian season 1. So the Mercury pipeline was typed out and written to accommodate the previs process for Mandalorian season 1. And, you know, it's used for season 2 and adapted and so forth. But yeah, so this is the pre-visualization reel by my company specifically. So what we just saw is the shooting process for Mandalorian overall, and this is specifically what the third floor did on it. So as you can see, we have the previous version and the final version. And the way it gets translated over is sometimes on set, they'll pull up this previs on the left on a giant TV and everyone can see how it's supposed to look. And that way they make sure they match it correctly. They also will use it as they pass it on to a tech viz team, which will measure out, okay, where do we want Baby Yoda's little cradle? Do we want it like 10 feet to the right? How fast does it move? Things like that. And so we use Unreal Engine for a lot of this, but a lot of this is also rendered out in Autodesk Maya, which is another very industry standard 3D program. So despite that, my whole talk is about Unreal Engine for virtual production. Unreal Engine is not one that just does everything. They're working towards it, but ultimately we still rely on other programs to assist because we want to take the strengths from Autodesk Maya, import those assets into Unreal, so on and so forth. And a lot of the job for someone like me is overseeing the transfer of an asset in and out of Unreal Engine. So it's not just working within Unreal Engine, but understanding what comes in, like what kind of files we're going to import and what kind of files we can export. So it does demand kind of like, an understanding of other popular 3D programs that we use for the 3D industry in general.
I think we have some questions, Stephanie.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Okay. Eloisa Lopez, how was your first experience working for a big and renowned production company?
It's hard to describe the joy. I know I'm very fortunate. Usually coming out of film school, you start out with a very assistant position. I think that I was very lucky in film school to do something that very much fit the skill set of what they needed. And so I was very lucky to kind of end up straight at a company like this. And it's always going to be cool to me. Like sometimes I still feel like a kid. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. One more specific kind of observation is that usually for people who are learning themselves, which is the majority of us, people who come out of college, you are building your own projects in your own time and you work in a certain way that you're comfortable with. And that's totally fine. But the biggest thing I learned on coming to third floor is how much of it is not about your technical skills, but about your collaboration skills. So for instance, on a lot of shows, you could be working with like 20, 30 people at the same time. So how are you going to name the files properly? How are you going to communicate? These are the changes. I just updated a new version. How are you going to work within a team? And by that, I mean the soft skills of communicating, of staying on track, of like taking orders and explaining what you're doing, but also the technical side of it, of making sure you're not deleting somebody else's work, making sure you're saving it properly so someone else can find it, cleaning up your files so someone else can understand what you were doing and pick up where you left off, and so on and so forth. So those kind of skills only grow bigger at a bigger company you get to.
Excellent.
So that's kind of an overlook at LED walls, which is the most popular use of virtual production. People usually use those together. Virtual production overall, the term, I like to see it as the use of technology to help the visualization of the storytelling. So that can also be next. That can also be through something called the HoloLens. So the Microsoft HoloLens, I believe, launched in 2017. It is a set of goggles that you can see through. So it's augmented reality. It's not like VR where you can't see anything, but you can see the world around you and you can see a 3D image on top of it. So on this bottom right corner, we have a view through the HoloLens glasses. That's what it would look like if you're looking through it. So you would see a 3D model. And as you can see in these images I put here, the HoloLens can be used for medicine, for architecture. And how can we use it for virtual production? So third floor has a virtual production tool we call Chimera. Let's take a look. Chimera is a tool. It is a program that we put on the HoloLens that lets a director or any filmmaker see a massive set that they want to work with or see a world in real time with somebody else. So it's collaborative as well. So say the director and the cameraman can both put on a HoloLens and join a session and look at something. So in this specific clip we see here, what these two people are looking at, this is a cathedral. This is from King Arthur. I don't know what year that came out. It was kind of a while ago, but this is a small little set of King Arthur. They can scale it up and see what's it like to stand in here. Do we like the pillars? Do we like the statues? And so on.
That's awesome. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chimera is really cool. And you can also make them move. So like, he's like, I kind of want the statue a little bit more forward. And the thing with 3D models is, whether you're going to end up shooting King Arthur on an LED wall, or you're going to have it on a green screen after, it's still a 3D model at the end. So you can just pass that model on to whoever's going to put in the movie, and it can be exactly as the director wanted. Yeah. So this right here
there are some questions coming in. Do you want us to put it at the end of the presentation, or
sure,
do you want to answer them?
I can hear the questions now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Stephanie, do you want to help me with the questions? There's one related to the LED panels, and it says, with the use of these LED panels, do you think that productions with a smaller budget in the future will be able to match the range of audience that blockbuster productions get? That's an interesting question.
That's a great question. And that's something that I think the industry is figuring out right now. The reality is not in the same way. So it's going to be, if you don't have the Disney millions of dollars, you can't shoot an entire film because you can't build a stage that big, and you're going to have people acting, like taking 2 steps and then they can't keep walking, So in that sense, you can't have the same type of story told. However, there are certain use cases an LED wall, like a very small LED wall, can come in handy. One instance is car scenes. LED walls look really great on cars driving because, if you're driving through a city, it's a lot smarter to just have a wall sending the lights back though. So there's a lot of like small scale applications that come in really handy. I would say it's more about being like selective. When you have a smaller budget, it's being more selective because not every production needs to be on an LED wall. Like I was kind of saying, the reason we use it on Mandalorian is because he was like a walking reflective ball. So your reflections really matter there. If you were to shoot something out in an open grass field, you might as well just go shoot it in the open grass field because it'll look more realistic, the sunlight. So it's really kind of like a case by case, production by production. Ultimately comes down to the story. Does the story benefit from having it? And stories like Mandalorian have to be told with that kind of money. So you are limited in that sense, but that doesn't necessarily mean you can't use it at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Excellent.
Let's just see the rest of this video. So Chimera is also operated. You have all these options to turn off certain set pieces, visualize it. So people who are wearing the HoloLens can see things, and people who are watching them can see what they're seeing as well. This right here is a VR headset. You put the same program and like be able to scan the same thing, because the nice thing about 3D models, as I was saying, is we all kind of share the same 3D models. So yeah. So what they're doing here is they have it all taped out, and they can have the exact measurements to scale, because you're not going to build a giant cathedral from scratch. No matter how much money you have, it wouldn't be smart to do that and then have to realize, it has to be a bit bigger. So this helps people see what they want and be able to create exactly what they want without having to just like close their eyes and imagine it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So this is a tool called Chimera, one of the many tools. I don't know specifically if this was developed for a production. It was a little bit before my time, but Chimera is one of a couple visualization tools that we have. Chimera does run off of Unreal Engine, so it was developed in that. Another application for the HoloLens, which is going to jump a little bit, taking a little bit of a segue out of this, but is going to be HoloLens was used at NASA. So before I graduated college, when I was in college, one summer I interned at the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory.
Cool.
What about that?
I was doing it's a really funny story how I ended up here, but the reason I bring this up is that it could not possibly be a more different industry than filmmaking. It's aerospace and filmmaking. And so how did I end up here? And it's because a lot of these tools are very shared. So the project I was on, well, this was not the project I was on. This was the team I was on. The team I was on I was mentored by the man who wrote On-Site, this was one of the programs that the Microsoft HoloLens was announced with. So in 2017, Microsoft was like, hey, everyone, we made these cool glasses. Here is a program. They announced the HoloLens using this program to demonstrate. And the use case for this is for astronauts to walk on Mars. It's not directors, it's astronauts. They're not looking at movies, they're looking at rocks. So it's very, very different. But if we kind of compare what we just saw with this, it's kind of the same attempt at visualizing something that you can't see in real life, at least not yet. It helps. We don't see it here just yet, but On-Site is collaborative. And you can hop in with other scientists, geologists, and see what you want to see. So my specific project was kind of adapting this for a VR headset. And it was a very software engineer centered. I was not making movies. I was working with a space robot. But the reason I bring this up is not only to show the ways that you can use a HoloLens for different applications and the way these practices are used, but the fact that I had this experience in college that had nothing to do with filmmaking, and yet look at how the skills completely transferred over to filmmaking. The way that I think that I remember when I was in college, I was always like, oh my gosh, I need to find out exactly what I want to do that forever and get really good at it. And what I learned kind of looking back is that I gathered all these unique experiences that at the time I was like, I had you don't know how it's going to come together, but it ends up all being useful. And you end up using those diverse set of skills in ways you never would have expected. So that's kind of why I bring that up, is that virtual production is so much about creativity, problem solving, and innovation. And so to get to, any kind of experience you have in innovation, in problem solving, is going to come help you. All the even mistakes and all those projects are going to end up coming in.
Yeah, for sure. Austina, when you were trained and you were educated at college, of course you studied modeling, texturing, and then Unreal, right?
Yes.
Because we have a question from Alexander Brenes, which says, I have knowledge in Maya and I have obtained some certifications in Unreal Engine, but what technical knowledge is the most sought after by companies that use this type of technology?
That's a wonderful question. I think that is my next slide. No, I will hop to the next slide and then we will come back, because I would like to answer that question. This is kind of a layout of what, based on my time here in the industry, of what I find as the most valuable skills. And on the left here, we have the answer to that question, what I consider hard skills, the technical skills. So in Unreal Engine, I would say how to build an environment, how to drag an asset in, how to change the materials, and how to optimize, because even though Unreal Engine is powerful, not every computer can run super high quality. And how can you optimize a scene while trying to maintain quality? There's a lot of methods to do that. How to build tools. Not saying you have to know how to build something like Chimera, but do you kind of understand and you see the way you can write that, the way you can develop that, and then how to manage assets as well. That would be, in my experience, what I found, some of the kind of the umbrella skills that really kind of can prepare you for whatever challenges you need for Unreal Engine. For Maya, specifically in regards to virtual production, I would say how to export assets to Unreal. And it's not just like hitting an export button, but being familiar with the settings, how that changes when you export, how to solve problems when the export looks bad, when there's no textures and things like that. So those would be the kind of hard skills. On the right here, I have more of the soft skills, which ultimately I think are more important. And I'm sure many people will say so as well, because the technology is changing almost every month. Unreal Engine 5 is out now, and, it's going to keep growing. And so even if you become a pro at it right now, in a month, you're not going to be a pro at it anymore. So the most valuable skills, in my opinion, are the problem solving, finding new challenge, like how do you find new methods of solutions for the new challenges, thinking on the spot, because sometimes, production schedules are very tight. You don't have like a whole month to sit here and be like, oh, what should we do? It's like more like if you have like, okay, you have two options. What do we do? Same thing with debugging, because sometimes things will go wrong and all eyes are you and we're waiting for you. How can you be resourceful? It's not always just like, sometimes you Google them. Sometimes, can I go to the log, look at and trace back where the error came from? It all comes from, that's something that comes a bit more from experience. And so the best way to kind of develop that skill is just make your own projects, run into issues, learn from your issues, learn from your mistakes, and learn what went wrong, and remember how you solved them. And finally, as I kind of discussed, communication is so, so important. Communicating to people who are not on the 3D team, people who work on set, being able to be responsive with that. And so those are kind of the key skills. Let me go back to this slide. This is kind of an overview of how the whole virtual production process looks in general. It's very generalized, very broad. This is something straight off the Epic Games website. So here in this box area is the stage at which Unreal Engine is typically used. So as we can see, it's in the beginning. You start with the script, you go to the art departments, and they think, okay, how do we want this to look? And then you decide how you want it to look. You pass it on to be visualized. The stunts team, the art team, the technical teams, and this is the stage that relies on Unreal Engine, at least in a blanket, like in a very generalized sense of most productions. And then moving forward, you may or may not use Unreal Engine for if you're shooting on an LED wall, or you may shoot just live action or on a green screen. You go and edit it. Sometimes for post-production, when you're doing the final visual effects, sometimes they'll do it in Unreal Engine as well. It's just a case-by-case basis. And then you get to the final edit. Sometimes they'll go back to the beginning if they change their mind, so on and so forth. But hopefully, if you plan it out in the beginning, you don't have reshoots. But that's kind of an overview of how it looks. Or at least how it looks as of now, as this pipeline kind of evolves. Here are just a couple little images of what that might look like. So up here we have in-camera visual effects, where Unreal Engine is powering the background and it's compositing the green screen in real time. So if this guy were to move the camera around, you would see the background move around with her as well. These are just some other screenshots and how you can use a camera in Unreal, how you can write code that helps, set up some kind of event to happen in the world, and how you can design characters if you want to have creatures or anything animated in the background. But there's just a lot of applications and a lot of tools. Since it is a game engine, it's supposed to be able to create any world you want. So the same applies to the films that we want to create. Given all of that, that was a very high level. Those would kind of look at some high level use cases. Some of Third Floor is lucky to work on some really big, really cool projects in the industry. But kind of going back to the question that we had about how can smaller budgets utilize this technology. So when I was at Chapman University, I was very fortunate to shoot a little LED wall film. Chapman built a very tiny LED wall is like 9 by 15 feet. So it's like the size of a wall in a bedroom, and it can fit like 1 or 2 people on it. I planned this huge thesis film. It was my senior thesis film. So like my final project at Chapman, it used the LED wall along with green screen. It was a very ambitious idea, maybe a little bit too ambitious for the size of this wall, but let's just take a look at this because, so this was about, oh, wow, like only a year. It was like about a year ago, but this is the project that I believe got me the job that I have right now. I'll be honest with you guys, most student projects aren't great. I wouldn't say this film, like especially now working at Third Floor, I wouldn't say this film was by any means, not by any means like industry standard. I don't think it came out to be something so beautiful that Third Floor was like, oh my gosh, it's beautiful. But I think from what I see in my skill set, the most valuable thing I got out of making this film were the problem solving, the challenges I had, specifically that I had to learn how to shoot such a big scale project on a tiny LED wall. It challenges your problem solving skills a lot more because when you're on Mandalorian, you can shoot whatever you want. But if you don't know how to solve problems on something this small, you want to have the skills to, when you're shooting on something with limitations, that set you up to shoot when you have all the resources in the world. So yeah, this is thesis film. We wrapped it up last year after I graduated, and this specific project we shot on an LED wall. We had a little CG dinosaur. Chapman University is a great film school. The visual effects department is a little bit smaller. So unfortunately, I was pretty much the only person doing visual effects on this film, which I knew going in. And I think it was definitely quite challenging because that's not at all how the industry works. But the upside of it is that I got a chance to experience every stage of production. So I got to do the previs, I got to do the shooting, I got to do the visual effects, and that kind of equipped me with a very broad set of skills. I wouldn't say that's the way to go. I would say this film could have turned out a lot better if I had other help with it. So I'm not recommending you do everything on your own, but that was kind of the bright side of me having to do everything on my own.
Austina, we have one question from Harvard. He's asking, do you think that with the development of the metaverse, the demand for this type of technology will increase?
I think so, yes. I think that I am not too sure where the metaverse will go. That's something I'm not too sure. I don't really know where that's going to go yet. But I think that there's so much overlap with the content. I think that's a big thing. Is like this whole content, 3D content or 2D content. Like this whole demand for content is going to increase. It just becomes another platform and another source that this kind of content creativity kind of enables more people to get their hands on and be able to contribute to it.
Yeah.
So that's how I would see it.
We have another question from Jose, and he's asking, what process would you say is the most difficult in the creation of a project?
Ooh, that is such a good question. I would say definitely the beginning. The beginning is the most exciting in the sense you're like, what kind of idea can we make? I love dinosaurs growing up, so I went with the dinosaur film, and that was the fun part. But when you sit down and you're like, okay, now let's look at which shots we're going to do. How are we going to do this one? Oh, we can't do that one because we don't have enough money. We have to get rid of it, and now we have to rewrite the story, so we don't need that shot. Things like that. It's the part before you go on set. Maybe that's because I work in previs. I'm saying that's the most important step, but I really do think that planning ahead, that's the point where the most important decisions are made, and those important decisions are what set you up, because once you shoot something, there is some space for that creativity afterwards, but ultimately what you shot on set is what you shot, and it's what you have. So having those decisions at the beginning and planning before you go shoot, I think are the most challenging.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent answer. An excellent question, of course.
Cool. So with that said, this project was called Ceratosaurus, and that is going to be the project I'm going to open for everyone.
Oh, okay.
So let's take a look at the exact escape. Can we still see my screen?
Yes.
Cool. Okay. This is the exact Unreal Engine project that it's still on my computer. I never deleted it for some reason, but this is the exact Unreal Engine project that the entire film was made in. So I'm not sure what everyone's Unreal Engine background is in here, but I wanted to just open this up and let's just poke around and let's see what's in here. And yeah, I'm just going to kind of talk through things. This is kind of open. If anyone has any questions, like what's this? How do you make this? That's kind of what this time is for. Right off the bat, I want to say that a lot, we see that we have a million dinosaurs here because they're all from different shots. This guy was from that shot. And when you open them in a sequence, which is like a clip, you only see one of the dinosaurs. So we have a shot with them. They all have little animations on them as well. One thing I'd like to point out, if anyone's familiar with how outliners work, you've got a ton of things in the scene. My outliner is very messy. Usually if you're on big production, they have an organization format where there's a naming format. And since, as I said, it was pretty much just me on this for like 2 years, I kind of just went with whatever. But the practice of organization is something that's super important. And it's like very, very important on set. People are going to be very strict about that. So pay no mind to the messiness of this, because that is not how we actually do it in big productions. But yeah, so what we have here is we have a big sky. It's like we see the clouds that move. We have sun. We can change the sun. We can change the speed of the clouds. If we take a look at this is what the world looks like. It's just this big slab. But once you're all the way down here, you don't really see them. I'm just going to poke around with some various tools. There's a landscape tool. My personality is an extrovert. I love to be around people. So I love being on set, which is funny because I was an animation major and most of my friends like to just sit at home in a blanket and like be on a computer. And I love doing that. But when I remember being on set in college and not really enjoying it that much, but starting to be on set with Third Floor, I think I found a passion. I became more interested in it. So I very much enjoy being on set. I love the collaboration and seeing people and being around people. And that's something that is new. So I didn't used to like doing that, but I think, as people like find their interests come and go. So yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Cool. So this here is the ravine. These are a bunch of models I made myself. These are like extremely randomized. So there's a little bit of math in there. It's like a procedural, we call it like procedural modeling, by just having a bunch of chunks. If anyone's not familiar with how like kind of assets work in Unreal, they are just these big pieces. And that's what they look like. And you drag in an asset wherever you want. So if I want to add another rock in here, I'll drag it right there. Where is it? Maybe that was a bad example. Let me go find a better example. Okay. Rock. Let's use this rock. Where's the rock? Or let's use a dinosaur. Dinosaurs are a little easier to see. Okay. We find this dinosaur. This is the texture that we have on the dinosaur. So it's just a simple little blueprint map. And we'll find the model.
I have a question. How important is it to understand blueprints? Do you have to be an expert in it or just the basic things you can do?
Yeah. For someone in my position as a technical director, because I bridge between the art and the code programmers, having an understanding of it is important. If you're someone who is just interested in making models, it's not as important. But there's no harm. It'll only help you if you have an understanding. You don't need to necessarily know how to write a game out of it, but something such as the material graphs. This is a very simple blueprint, and all it is saying this texture goes here, this number goes here, and just kind of understanding how to read it, even if you don't know how to write it, means that, let's say you're working on a production, you'll be able to know what went wrong. You'll be able to know how to change something if you just want to make a tweak to your personal preference. So having a baseline understanding is only going to help you, but if you don't know how to code, that's okay if you're not looking to code. So yeah. I'm going to hop over into another map. So this is another map. I made 3 big maps for this film. So the film takes place from like daytime, sunset to nighttime. This is the nighttime scene. We saw a little bit of this, and this is what gets put up on the screen. What we have here is like a little water simulation. And if we look up in the sky, there are some leaves falling, and those are fluid simulations. So those are just other effects that you can put in to add to the realism. So sometimes as a TD, sometimes some TD, as a technical director, we call ourselves TDs. Sometimes on the team, you'll know, okay, we know this person is really good at making water simulations, because there's a lot that goes into it. So, and then we know this person is really good at making explosions. And so I just point those out because there is just so much to know about Unreal Engine. It has so many capabilities. There's a lot of things with lighting. You see how the lighting is purple. Some people are really good at controlling the lighting, because ultimately when you render an image out, it may look a little bit different than you expected. So there's just so many different facets to it. There's like time of day. Let's see. There we go. There's the daytime. There's the moon. And so, everyone has a different skill set within. You don't have to be a pro at everything. I obviously created all of this myself, which is, as I was saying, I did a lot of it myself. I did this over the course of almost 2 years. So this is not something that I created, overnight by any means. There's some things I would change about it now. I've been at 3rd floor for 9 months, and there's all these things I would change about it. So my skill set's constantly growing. The new version of Unreal 5 has a different system for water simulation. So that's something you would have to learn again, or like build your skills on top. But there's just so many things that you can play with, have fun with. You don't have to be a pro at everything. The most important thing is having the ability to learn and being able to learn, for sure.
Austina, there are some questions. For example, Daniela is saying, do you still collaborate in modeling, animation, rigging, and lighting, etc., besides being on set?
Yeah. So that kind of depends. So let me try and think. Let me pull this up, actually. This is another tool called Cyclops, which I've done quite a bit of work in. This is something that runs on an iPad. It's very similar to Chimera, but it just runs on an iPad. And Cyclops is pretty much so you can put a person or you can put a set on an iPad. And as someone who works with Cyclops, I take directly those models that a modeler made and I put it on an iPad. So there's a lot of a collaboration there. We have like the artists that make the work. And if even someone in my position, if I wanted to, I could be like, I'll help make this myself. Personally, I don't like modeling that much, so I don't really end up in those positions, but some people really like doing it themselves. So they have the freedom to also do some of that artistic work themselves. If they were to put, let's say, like the Game of Thrones dragon on here, maybe they'll ask the artist who made the dragon, can you send me the rig for this dragon? And then I would be able to pose the dragon how they want it. Or if I didn't like rigging, I would be like, can you send me the already posed version of this dragon? And they'll send it to me already posed. So there's definitely a lot of collaboration there, and it's quite flexible. Yeah.
Okay. And there's a question saying, how much time would you consider for pre-production and planning for a project like that?
For like this specifically?
I think they're talking about this one. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. I started planning this project in August of 2020. So like mid-pandemic. We went to film August of 2021, so about a year of pre-production, but for this one, it's like a student film. The film was 7 minutes long. So that's to give you a bit of the scale. It was a 7-minute film. It was about a year of planning, and mostly just because we followed the curriculum and because it was one person doing it. I would say that, especially because we were shooting on an LED wall, all of this had to be finished before we went and filmed, and had to be completely finalized. And it's kind of dark here, so let me turn on lit mode. This thing right here, this little gate, was an actual piece that the production designer built. So she actually built a life-size version of that. So obviously we had to finalize the art styles, that she would build a wooden door that looked exactly like it would in Unreal Engine. So that's kind of, a lot of that kind of planning had to be done early on. So that's why it took us a whole year. The post-production, the production for it, we shot over 2 weekends, so 6 days. That's, I think that's just a standard that my university has. I think, every university, based on the teamwork and the size, they would have different rules for that. And then the post-production for that was possibly about, maybe about like 9 months. And that was largely the dinosaur. Because the dinosaur was completely animated. It was supposed to be a motion capture dinosaur, but there were some issues on set. So the motion capture just didn't look very good, which is normal. Obviously we would like to just have everything work perfectly, but sometimes it doesn't work perfectly and you have to work with that. So the motion capture didn't work fine, and we ended up animating a lot of it. And so a majority of the post-production time was spent animating.
Whoa. Yeah. There's another question from Alexander. He's asking, in a real production environment, is Blueprints or C++ used more?
Ooh, let's see. Honestly, in my experience, different people have different preferences. Some people like to write in C++, but I see Blueprints a lot more because not everyone who is on set is going to be a programmer. So Blueprints are easier for people to read by far. Artists, especially in such a creative medium, a lot of artists prefer Blueprints over code because they're visual learners. So Blueprints are easier for other people to read. Yeah. But it could go either way. So,
right.
I think I know some people who code in C++ and then convert it to Blueprints if that works better for them. But
Austina, do you see the labor market demanding more and more people that knows Unreal, or do you see it just in the infancy of the request?
I think I personally see a lot of demand for Unreal Engine. I would say that's something that's, it kind of depends on different areas of the industry. I would say in feature films, but definitely there's kind of some demand for that in commercials too and TV shows. I remember when I was applying for Unreal, I very much, when I graduated, I was like, this is my skill set. Exactly. I'm going to apply for Unreal Engine jobs. There were a lot of them. Sometimes the Unreal Engine jobs are to do it for games. And I was like, I prefer to do it for features. So there is a demand for that, but it does kind of vary on different everywhere you go. Yeah. And okay. Even within Unreal Engine jobs, there's so many sub facets to it. I used to see a lot of job postings that say Unreal Engine generalist. But there's also some that are more specific. They want someone who knows how to operate Unreal Engine for live action, someone who makes it for games, even for live action. Some people, I think it's a lot of people are looking for generalists right now because
it's kind of hard to talent.
Yeah, it's hard to find. But one specific growth indicator that I can say that I know for sure I've seen is that when I graduated, I was class of 2022. I graduated a semester early, but in my class, I was possibly the only person who had any interest in this at all. All my friends liked to draw, pencil and paper. Nobody cared about what I was doing. And I remember when I was a senior and I was about to graduate, the freshman class that came in, so people 4 years younger than me, there were so many people who were like, oh my gosh, Chapman has an LED wall. Oh my gosh, I want to learn Unreal Engine. So the demand and the interest for it in the young people has actually increased. from my observation, like drastically. And I believe now we have like so many more classes. Like there was almost no Unreal Engine class when I was there, and now they have like one every semester. So the demand and the interest for that
is increasing.
Yeah, that was about it. This is kind of, I mean, I could chat a little bit more if anyone's interested in anything specific in here, but I just kind of wanted to show, since a lot of projects that you see come out, you don't ever get to see behind the scenes of it. You get to see like the very nice behind the scenes of it. You don't get to see like everything. So I just kind of wanted to share so we see how a 3D environment becomes a film. But yeah, I'm just open to questions now. I have no further. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we have one more question from Daniela, and she's asking, Unreal Engine has real-time renders. So that is the companies are applying the media. I don't know if it's a question, but yeah.
Yes, Unreal Engine does have real-time rendering. In their terms is this, which is essentially that this lighting changes in real time. See, I'll move that up, down like that. That's what they kind of mean by real-time rendering. If I were to render this out to a video file, it takes a couple minutes or something compared to rendering out of Maya, which could take hours. So it's not always instant, but it's a lot faster if you want to create a file out of it. But yeah, if you were to render out of something like Unity, the Unity game engine, it's also a lot slower. What's nice about Unreal is that for the most part, what you see here is what you're going to get. And in Maya or in Unity or anything, the render could look completely different because they don't process the light at the same time.
For all these projects have you paid for the use of Unreal?
No, Unreal Engine is 100% free. The entire thing is free. Yeah, so it's free to download literally right now. You download it through the Epic Games launcher. So for anyone who plays video games, they might already have that on their computer. It's completely free, and that's what's great.
Así es que les agradecemos que estén con nosotros. Síganos en nuestras redes sociales, estén pendientes de nuestros próximos webinars y podcasts, que de hecho hay uno muy bueno que acaba de salir en LinkedIn relacionado con lo que es alguien que quiera hacer un estudio digital o un estudio para hacer videos profesionales. So, Austina, thank you. Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. We are proud to have you as a friend, as a contact from the West Coast of the U.S.
Your final words.
Austina is saying that it's pretty hot up there. So I hope that we can see each other again. Please give us your final words of inspiration for all the people that is watching this webinar.
Of course. I had so much fun. I hope you guys can see how much I love my work. It's something, working in this industry is so much fun. Loved sharing this. If anyone has any questions, feel free to add me on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only person with my name, so it shouldn't be too hard to find me. It was such a pleasure talking to everyone, and I hope you all have a wonderful night.